Rob Bolton is not a big model guy. What does that mean? We'll get into it here momentarily as the Golfbet insider from PGA TOUR.com joins us to preview this week's Travelers Championship. Big fella, analysis by paralysis, or maybe I have that the other way around. I'm paralyzed just thinking about it. Help me out by offering an explanation of why you're not a big model guy as it relates to an examination of the field here this week at CPC River Highlands. What's happening, by the way?
Hey, man. Good to see you back here. Yeah, I'm not a model guy. Models exist, and they have a point and a purpose, value in our space to help us identify who should play well, part of the projections. I know there are some who don't follow the game as the sport overall as closely. Perhaps they're dabbling in other sports. Time is a constraint, that sort of thing. And models can take you to a certain place with the data only. And I know they're there. I'm not get off my lawn guy yelling at the clouds. And I think about when would be the best time if I wanted to dabble. And I was thinking, okay, we have a couple of the last 2 weeks which have been grueling. We have no cut this week. TPC River Highlands, easy track, par 70, not necessarily going to be the easiest relative to par, but it's going to be easy. Last year's scoring average was a tournament record low. I mentioned no cut, and the fact that when we think about archetypes for specific types of formulas like this week, I always go to the 1-2 punch of hitting greens in regulation and sinking the putts of those greens hit in regulation. So marry the two together. It's only a field of 71. Doesn't really take all that long. And then share the model. It's a tool. It's something I use not as actively as I did this week, or at least to point it out in that space this week. And then I wanted to show what that data revealed. And lo and behold, nothing surprising at the top. But then once you get into number 2 and a little bit lower, perhaps there's some really good value. And look, I'm not espousing this is the way to do it. I'm just sharing a method that can help you whittle into somebody and potentially reveal who might present as strong for other reasons that maybe shouldn't for this week specifically. It just made sense to share it. And honestly, although there's quite a few words at the top of that, I try to limit that. It actually could have been 4 or 5 times longer to really share the level of that detail, even though it's one component of the work. So we talked about this before the Memorial Tournament presented by Workday. You and I did. I was really looking forward to seeing if this would be one of those weeks where the guys exhale after the major. And suddenly I feel like, man, it's been a couple of weeks where they've been out there, and how many wouldn't mind taking the week off? So other factors, as usual, played into it. And I'm sure we'll get into that here momentarily.
There's a good chunk of the U.S. Open field that is in Cromwell, Connecticut this week, including Scotty Scheffler, the betting favorite at plus 400. That's where he has lived all year. Xander Schauffele, second choice at plus 750. They're 1-3 in the world. They're 1-3 in the power rankings. Patrick Cantlay, number 2 in the power rankings this week. Rob, coming off, in my opinion, his best ever showing in a major. He was really fighting until late on Sunday. And I thought because of that, Cantlay might be seeing heavy action this week, but there's still excellent value in the neighborhood of about 20 to 1 for Cantlay here this week. Something to pay close attention to.
I so badly wanted to slot him number 1 in the power rankings. Just, we think about him shooting at 60 as an amateur on this course. What is it, 13 years ago now? And then he didn't play for a while, was out for a while, and then he's been back, and he's played really well. And then that close call, I mean, is it a close call? He finished T3 only 2 back, but he really wasn't in it. He had a strong finish, but a kick, but, he wasn't going to win that U.S. Open. The fact that, Xander Schauffele, good friend of his, I think, won the PGA Championship just a month prior, you knew that had to play into that relationship. Cantlay hasn't necessarily been in a slump. He's had a decent season, but not Cantlay-esque necessarily. The consistency is a little bit off. And again, I mean, we know who he is, household name. We expect him to just, contend every time out. It's not going to happen. He's showing that. But in a week like this, and on a little bit of an uptick after last week, and he's a machine, that's where the confidence comes in. He's got to be in every lineup, DFS, multiply the units, that type of thing in terms of betting as well.
Sam Burns had a sneaky productive U.S. Open, didn't he? Finishing tied for ninth, very emblematic of his season, quietly humming along with 6 top 10s. So a lot of momentum, a lot of fine play for Sam coming into the week here, and some healthy value for the guy who's 6th in the power rankings at plus 3,300.
Yeah, that's really good value. I spun my wheels trying to figure out the best way to express how can it be a recurring theme that he has quietly had 6 top 10s. It's polar opposites in terms of it was I couldn't make it happen. Fortunately, no one called me out on it. Maybe just fewer people are reading than I actually realized fewer people are reading. That sort of thing. However, it has been quiet. It's just that it's been regular. He opened the season with 4 in a row. I mean, that's part of it. So it's only been 2 since. Another guy, younger. Part of the formula is, although these guys are physically fit and many of them are in their prime or younger, so they can handle 3 weeks on the road, I do prefer a guy who hasn't had that stress that some have had recently, and then there are exceptions to those guys as well in this field. But I'm leaning into a little bit of the youth, and Sam Burns' nappy factor also is still playing up a little bit. He had the strong opening start of the season, as I said, tapered off a little bit, focused on becoming a father. That happened, and then he's been playing well again. So keeping it simple with him. Again, a guy that he should be in every lineup, and wouldn't be surprised if he finally breaks through and wins another stroke play event. It's been a minute.
You need very little reason, if any, to include Keegan Bradley in the Golfbet content from week to week. He's 9th in the power rankings this week. How are we feeling about the prospects of the defending champion at plus 5,000 this week?
The show's not long enough. So Keegan up on the wall, winner of the 2011 PGA behind me. And just a shout out to the folks at the Hartford Yard Goats. There's my minor league baseball cap sitting over my left shoulder. Tim Restall and his talented staff. Of course, this is Keegan Bradley's backyard, and the fact that he'll always be the 2023 Travelers Championship winner has to feel incredibly, incredibly good. And the conversations he's been having in advance, I'm sure people coming out to see him and all that sort of thing. I mean, he's probably going to host this thing at some point, right? That's kind of where this thing is going. So the fact that he's back, he's been playing decently, his value is really nice. You're going to have to go get a piece of that as well. The model that we open the show with is a macro version. My micro technique every week for all of the years is everything is golfer specific. It still comes down to him right now and the feels of him at this tournament. I just hope that there's a less of a negative or a fatigue factor that may disappoint him in a physical way, because it has been a lot in the last couple of weeks. And does he have enough left in the tank? He's in his upper 30s. He's no longer in his prime. He's close enough. He's certainly physically fit enough. He's obviously went on that crazy diet that helped him lose weight and made him feel better a few years ago in terms of being able to compete with the others, and certainly the younger ones. But that's why he's number 9 in the power rankings, and everything else points to a strong week for the guy. And the feels of being the defending champion at this event is specific and unique.
I have the Hartford Yard Goats cap, by the way, in my collection, thanks to a winning bet I collected from you. So thank you very much. Trying to get a read on Hideki. Help me out on this, because Hideki's form has been quite good. I think he was 8th at the Memorial a couple weeks ago and a top 10 at the U.S. Open as well. He won a signature event this year when he shot that 62 on Sunday at Riviera. That was the round of the year, in my opinion. The odds are short, plus 2,200 for Matsuyama at 11th in the power rankings this week. Rob, what's your read?
He's toxic because we don't know about the injury. Even in no-cut events, I look forward to looking at the expert picks for PGA Tour Fantasy Golf to see if anybody's holstered the guy. Even in a week like this, he would make sense. He's in the power rankings. He's had experience on this course. Just everything you just mentioned in terms of form upon arrival. It all points to a solid week, but he's almost a no play. I mean, if every golfer had his profile, it'd be really difficult to have some fun at this because there's so much doubt around the guy all of the time. That said, he's been paying off the faithful a lot, as you mentioned at Riviera especially. This year has been better, certainly the win, but overall it's been a better. He's been better. He took I think it was the Wells Fargo he sat out with the stiff neck back. You know, that old chestnut as it concerns Matsuyama. Maybe it was too much golf, and that's what he sat out. And if it wasn't a signature event for which he was automatically qualified and marketed, maybe he wouldn't have committed because of the timing of it. So that's been baked into a lot of this prognostication. That can be a sensitive subject, I suppose, but it's also something that's really necessary and relevant when it comes to what I do and what bettors are expecting. Coming off the last 2 weeks, depending on how he's feeling, I'm holding my breath. He's not somebody I endorse, but again, if you're chasing in PGA Tour fantasy golf, that's the guy you want because you're going to get 5 cuts made from the others. Might as well lean into a guy like that, and you never know what can happen in a week like this.
Much has been made of a possible fatigue factor for the players who have moved through a very busy stretch of high-level golf over the last few weeks. I would hope for $20 million they could muster up the energy to compete this week, certainly. But, you know, maybe if you're sort of taking a deep dive into this, you look at someone who missed the cut last week, someone like Sungjae Im, for instance, and there's a twofold benefit to that. Perhaps you've got a little more rested player, and you're likely to get better value. And here's Im checking in at plus 5,000, big fella, and he's your outright winner among your sleepers this week.
Yeah, and 700 FedEx Cup points as well. Cannot go overlooked in the signature event. Last one of the season, no cut, 71 in the field. So the fact that BetMGM went down into top 30 was tasty. Appreciated that. And there's Sungjae Im. Again, he's my outright sleeper at 50-1 to win. Needed a guy who fit the profile that I'd already laid out for the work, which we've already covered. And he is that. He missed the cut last week. No pressure, extra rest. He won recently, defending a title back home in South Korea, and it's one of numerous leaderboard appearances in the last couple of months. So that's enough. And the fact that he's as long as 50-1, got to go in with that full unit. Even though the fact that Swanee, as I keep repeating to you, the recurring theme is none of the outrights for the sleepers have broken through. They're supposed to come out of the power rankings, and many of them have, fortunately.
Part of the fabric of this tournament through the years has been the introduction to golf fans of a promising young player. The Travelers Championship has been very gracious about extending sponsor invites to young players. You mentioned Cantlay a little bit earlier, Rob. I think Justin Thomas made his PGA Tour debut. You are in lockstep with the tournament in showcasing promising young players because you like Michael Thorbjornsen for a top 10 at plus 750, just the latest young player after a standout career at Stanford to make his PGA Tour debut this week.
Well, we're at that time of the season, right? It's mid-June. College is over, and a lot of these great talents have moved on, graduated, turned pro. And the tournaments this summer, the Opens especially, are going to save space for guys like this. The Travelers is not an Open. It's a signature event, yet it made space for Massachusetts native Michael Thorbjornsen, PGA Tour University valedictorian. He's now the newest PGA Tour member, so he would be eligible for the FedEx Cup playoffs this year. He's not Ludwig Oberg, but he's the next guy in line in that lane. And so, shiny new toy. Where's our whistle? Where's our sound effect? The dog has stopped barking, by the way. I don't know what's going on there. I'm still holding my breath about that. Yeah, thank you very much. So this guy already has a solo fourth 2 years ago at TPC River Highlands. This is his third appearance. Thorbjornsen we're talking about, not the dog. It's an opportunity, 7.5-1 for a top 10, no cut. That's top 7th of the field in a place where he's already finished top 5. So yeah, it's an opportunity. Lockstep, I try. It's still about the betting. It's still about showcasing a guy that makes sense from a value standpoint. And when I kept scrolling, I'm like, where is this guy? Because he's definitely somebody we need to keep an eye on for the foreseeable future. Oh, 7.5-1, no-brainer for top 10. Let's go with that.
7 straight W's for the New York Metropolitans. Still a little business to take care of on this Wednesday as we record this. One more game with the world champ in Arlington tonight, and then a big series on the north side later this week, big fella, that will determine a couple of the, 12 or 15 bets we have going with our teams this season. So we'll get a little clearer picture come Sunday evening. You and I will reconvene next week for the Rocket Mortgage Classic in Detroit. You can follow Rob on X, kids, at Rob Bolton Golf. Good to see you, big fella.
Yeah, 12 or 15 bets. We've cut back this year. This is my season this weekend at Wrigley. Hopefully I'll be smiling again next week, pal. See you then.